Well, anyway, thank you guys for coming to the AID training, which stands for Accident, Incident, and what is the other one? Who knows? Damage, there you go. Damage report. So this is really, I know it's good, we're going to take a little bit of time here, but it's actually really, really important for protecting the company, for documenting various things that go on, just having good communication. As a leadership team, we absolutely reference incident reports when something happened, and it can be something minor and something you may even look at and go, I don't know that I need to write up a report with that, but next, it happens on Saturday, and Monday we're going, what the heck happened with that? And we're looking for answers, per se, as to what happened. So we're going to dive into a lot of those topics. We're going to dive in how to properly write an incident report, when you write an incident report, all of those areas. So, so the first thing, what is a reportable incident, and when should you fill out the AID form? So first one is employee injury. We're probably all pretty well familiar with that. Someone gets hurt on the job, we fill out an employee injury. So Tony and Corey is the kitchen representatives. Someone cuts themselves in the kitchen. What do?
Go get a Band-Aid. Go back to work.
First, right? Get back to work. It's not that big a deal.
I always say you still have four good fingers on your hand.
Yeah. We fill out an incident report for the cut. Why do we fill out an incident report? I mean, you guys handle knives, right? Knives are a part. Sometimes we say knives. Culinary staff, cuts happen. We don't want to be complacent about that, but cuts happen. But the reality is sometimes down the road, that little minor cut turns into something bigger, and people end up in the hospital. And then we're really looking back and picking up the pieces. What happened there, right? So employee injury is one of them. Any questions about when you would do an employee injury one? None, okay. Guest injury. This one, when would you do a guest injury one? Slip and fall, okay. Somebody name me something else in your experience where you've seen a guest injury.
Crack falling on?
Yeah, that would be one. Absolutely. Absolutely. Some sort of, let's call that some sort of condition in the property that caused injury or potentially caused injury.
Very drunk and fell down.
Yes.
Oh God, Dave, that was not fun.
How about this? How about paramedics all of a sudden show up here at the front door of Woodcliff?
So last weekend?
Yeah. Do we do an injury report, guest injury report on that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, but maybe you weren't called ahead of time, to know that they were showing up. Do we still?
Yep.
Okay, we still do it, right? All right. So, when wouldn't we do a guest injury report?
If they got injured, like at Target and then came here.
Yeah, that might qualify. If they weren't injured here, thank you very much. That's a great way to put it. If they weren't injured here, we won't do a guest injury report. If they were injured here, then we're going to do one. Now we can't control somebody getting hurt in a guest room and they never say anything, right? But if we know about it, we're going to do one because we want to know the details related to how they got injured. Make sense? Domestic disturbance. So what qualifies as a domestic disturbance?
It's a fight in line.
Yeah, a fight, right? Two guys going at it, fist flying. That's a domestic disturbance, right? But give me another example of a domestic disturbance. Kim, we'll pick on you.
When you hear something in the other room, like another guest can call down and say there's a disturbance going on next door and we checked out.
So, husband and wife screaming at each other, top of their lungs, and physical threats being murmured back and forth. That might qualify as a domestic disturbance? It would, yeah, it does. Type of situation. Are there any other types of domestic disturbances? What was that, Mallory? I thought you were saying something for everyone to hear.
Are we talking like domestic attacks?
I
feel like you're pushing for something obvious here that I'm just not picking up.
Oh, okay, that's a fair question. I would say an altercation, a verbal altercation at the bar would count as a domestic disturbance. Okay? Two people, they start, they had too much to drink and they start going at each other. And they may be friends, they may not be friends, but that might qualify as a domestic disturbance because, again, happened Saturday night. Monday morning, we've got the guest surveys coming in talking about how there were two people that were going at each other at the bar and it ruined my whole lounge experience. And you might be sitting there going, well, that was just two people arguing with each other. Why do I have to bother filling out the paperwork? And we're all sitting there going, what happened? Is there something else I need to be concerned about related to this? What was going on? Does that make sense? When you're looking at it from that perspective. So some of this that you're filling out, you got to be thinking about who else may need to know about this because questions will come up down the road. And you may not be the only one reporting various issues. We may be hearing it back from our guests. And that's going to put us in a position where we're really kind of scrambling to figure out the details. Where if we have those details and we need to do guest follow-up and say, okay, yes, we had a problem at the bar and we're so sorry for that inconvenience. We did follow up with both parties and we may or may not tell the resolution, but at least we can speak to the details and the facts related to the situation and know what was going on. Makes sense. Any questions about domestic disturbance? Awesome. Vehicle damage. So what would constitute vehicle damage?
You back into someone's car in the parking lot or something.
Yeah. The first one I will say is vehicle damage to our own vehicles, right? So, someone backs into us, we back into them, all right? Any of the above. An accident that involves our own vehicles, okay? The second one, and this sometimes becomes a little more gray, but I tend to lean on the side of wanting this information. We know of two guests that backed into each other in our parking lot and the police were called. Type of situation. Now, you may not know all of the details related to that, and it's not that we're going to spend tons of time, but sometimes documenting that type of situation, because sometimes that can come back on us and all of a sudden they're calling up asking for camera footage and we say, camera footage for what? What happened? Type of situation. These things happen. Or, Monroe County Sheriff is at our door saying, hey, I need to find out more information. And we say, more information about what? What are you talking about? So that's why it becomes, and you say, well, why waste the time? You're not wasting the time. You're documenting the situation. Questions about that? Property damage. Someone runs into the building. Someone smashes a window. Somebody else fill in the blank. Anything else?
Rips the tent.
What's that?
Rips the tent.
Rips the tent intentionally, right? And it could be unintentional, depending on the situation. Yes. When there's physical damage to our property, especially if it's intentional or just pure negligence, type of situation. And you're going to see one that I'm going to put up on screen that we had from a few years ago, where a truck driver at the loading dock backed right into the loading dock column and then drove away. And didn't think it was a big deal. And it was about $12,000 worth of damage, if my memory serves, on the loading dock column. And so, anyway, that's definitely a property damage situation. Anything that is a potential liability for the hotel. What do you think might fall in this?
Slips on the floor.
Somebody slipping.
Slips, okay, so but now we're down to guest injury or employee injury, right, in that situation? Another thing.
If a guest thinks something was stolen from their room.
Yes, absolutely. A guest reports that something is stolen from the room. Excellent one. That isn't covered yet in the rest of these on there. Give me something else.
Bites.
Bites? Yeah, we'll
Bites.
what?
Bites. Beat.
Bites. Oh, yes, those bites. Yeah, yeah. We'll get into that here in a little bit. Those bites. So, yes, it would be one of those. I'm going to give one, and this one may be a gray area, but our bartenders are TIPS certified, correct?
Yep.
Right? And so what goes along with that certification? Why do we TIPS certify them?
So you know your laws.
Emily, I'm going to call on you.
What is it, or what goes into it?
Yeah, what is it and why do we do it?
So the TIP certification goes into alcohol recognition. You have to look at the signs of the person you're serving, how much they've been served. Are there any other factors that are going into, their height, their weight? If they're taking medication, you have to kind of look at not just the alcohol you're serving them, but look at the surroundings and everything else that's going on, and then if they leave here, and something happens to them, you are not just liable, but the place could also be liable.
Okay, excellent. So let me I'll summarize that. I believe that there are situations where we cut people off from being served, that it's worth documenting. Corey, I'll let you speak to that if there's situations, and sometimes that can be gray, and I understand that. Corey, what's your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want to be able to protect yourself, and particularly in this instance where it's alcohol. Not only the last person to serve them is personally liable, but also the company is liable in those situations, and particularly it can come on quick for those of you who have ever served alcohol to people, and all of a sudden you didn't realize that they were taking a medication, as Matt said. How would you know that? You wouldn't, and then there's signs of intoxication. So documenting, what you have done. Sometimes one drink can make that sign. So it may not be any negligence on it, but having that report to be able to have that back up, or other alcohol-related incidences. So you may have an incidence where people were overserved, coming back from a wedding off property, not on our property, where there becomes an incident where people don't like what the other person said, and there's a harassment issue that is going on within our establishment, and are we doing everything that we do to show care towards our guests, and that duty to make sure that we're doing everything possible to make it comfortable for our guests, other guests, and it may mean making sure that they get back to their room safely, enlisting the help of others in their party to make sure that they're taken care of, and basically just documenting that down so that if anything were to come up after the fact, that particularly this day and age with what happened in Las Vegas, there is a increased look at what a hotel's responsibility is and a duty of care for the people that are within our establishments. And that is ongoing, and that is to be determined on what's going on, but I can guarantee you, based off of the results of what's happened in Las Vegas, there is going to be more scrutiny and figuring out what exactly that duty of care lies and what level of responsibility there is. So we want to make sure that, similarly to our partners here, and saying we want you to go home in the same way that you came here, same with our guests. So anything you think may be a question on that, we want to make sure that it's better to over document than under document.
And you can absolutely as restaurant manager, there's absolutely patrons that have come down to the bar. You don't realize that they just spent the day drinking in the room, and they all of a sudden have one drink, right? And you realize that they're over intoxicated. That's something we want to have documented, because it's obvious we only served them one drink. We didn't overserve them in any way, shape, or form. We can't control what they consumed before they got to us, right? So, yeah. And then, so the next one is, anytime an event would have a negative impact on the hotel business and require other management to be aware. So that's kind of the catch-all as it goes into. Yeah, fire alarm would be one of those as well. So as we're looking at that. Any questions so far? Awesome. So let's get into the form. You guys have all had attached with you the paperwork, and that, what you have in your hands, is the AID paperwork. You're going to see a whole list of things, and there's some good reading on filling out the form, so I'll give you the opportunity to read that. We're going to hit a lot of the highlights of that, how to fill it out, what to ask, things of that nature as we go through. There's a couple areas that we don't hit specifically. And then there's a lot of things. Some of this, as you're reading on through it, when it says manager, it applies to Corey, or it applies to Andrea if Corey is in Corey's absence, or sometimes it applies to the HR manager, because this is written for all of our properties, and so many of our properties don't have HR directors on site. So so many of this would be things that you wouldn't necessarily walk through these steps. Like the first thing here is it tells you, who do you send off this incident report to once you've completed. You won't do that. You won't be the one sending it off. It will be it'll be one of those people that will be sending off that incident report once it's been created. We've got attached here, and you know what, I forgot to print and hand it out, but you're going to see at the end of the slides here, who does it go to internally on this whole process of the incident report. So, and then it falls, under various things related to HR here on there. So we're going to move on to the form portion. It's Widewaters Accident Injury Damage Report right at the very top. We're going to start looking at that, the form portion of that document. So, as we get into this, we're looking at gathering the information here. So, what kind of information do we need? So first we have the who, what, where, when, how, and why are the questions that we need to answer coming through this incident report. So, asking the key questions will help you to get the key answers as you're going through this. Listen to what witnesses are saying and other experts, i.e. medics, police officers, whomever is here that is an expert in this situation. If a person is first aid certified and you're not, well, they're an expert in handling an injury situation. You're not. I'm not. I'm not first aid certified, so I can't, say, those things. So, what are the experts saying about the situation? Listen to what friends around are saying and asking the injured and how it might relate to the current event. Note any authorities called and involved for police involvement. Request incident reports or CR reports, as Monroe County Sheriff refers to them, from the police, and note it on the report. So as you're going through this, so the who, what, where, when, how, and why. This is really critical. The key to this whole situation is when you're dealing with a guest, I always say, don't walk out there with this form in hand, and I've seen people do it. They'll walk out with a clipboard and they're going, so what happened? What's your name? And it's obvious at that situation that we're fully documenting this incident to cover our butts at that situation. If you're a guest in that situation that just got injured, and at that point you don't care if it was any fault of the hotel or not of the hotel, how would that sit with you? Would it sit well? No, it wouldn't sit well. I'm sitting here, I'm injured, take care of me, okay? So, and I've seen it happen. This information is important. Handling the guest is even more important than getting this information. Handling the moment is more important. So, now I've handled many of these, so I don't necessarily bring the form out. I know what the questions I have to answer. But I've got a notepad there, and I'm making like small little notes for myself as I'm going through the situation, just to, jog my memory. When I sit down and fill out this incident report, I can, write down those notes, or I'm, talking to the police officer or overhearing. And, so these are all, really important ways to handle this situation, because you don't want to be in that, you don't want to look like I'm hovering over and I just need to fill out an incident report right now and I just need to move on. You give that impression, it's going to be a bad guest experience. And then that guest may say, hey, maybe the hotel has reason to be concerned. Maybe they have reason to be worried about the situation, right? And we don't necessarily want to give that impression, but the first thing is we want to take care of the guests. Does that make sense to everyone? And I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, we had one of our health club members get all of a sudden really start bleeding badly in the locker room. And I went down to handle the incident. I stood back and watched the whole situation. I didn't ask the guest one single question, because by the time I got down there, there were already paramedics there. There was already Monroe County Sheriff there. There was already somebody that was first aid certified there handling the situation. Who am I to ask the questions? I'm observing. And so when the medic says, it looks like she might have been on some sort of blood thinner and it was nothing related to anything going on here, guess what I did? Anybody know? I wrote it down. Absolutely. EMT said nothing related to the hotel. Went in the incident report. Who said it? Did Matt Holland say it? No, the EMT said it, right? So who am I to say that? I'm nobody. EMT said it. Monroe County Sheriff says, yeah, it does look like we can't, put it to anything that they ran into, or because I'm the maintenance engineer, right? That's my first question. What did they run into to cut themselves? I mean, it was bad. The lady was just about passed out type of situation. But stood back. It wasn't about filling out the report. Even though I was listening to fill out the details of the report, it was about making sure the guest was well taken care of. And as pertinent details came up, taking a moment just to quickly write them down as a note. Corey, you got anything to add?
Yeah, there's also times where you don't realize in the moment that it may be an aid report worthy, but there's also, I would always also just say, err on the side of caution. On the side, you never know what's gonna come of it. Maybe later you're like, oh, maybe I should write one down. So don't think that if the time has passed, I missed that window of opportunity. It's just kind of a thing I'd like to add, and you never ever know what's gonna happen. We had a lady who went out stargazing. And went over to the nice little park that we have, and I was like, "You mean the golf course?" and then came back and said, "I want you to pay for my medical bills because I tripped and it was dark."
New golf course initiative, night golf next year.
Yeah, so it was one of those things where you have someone who literally wants to go to a dark spot, but then says it's too dark. So you never know. We have 30,000 unique individuals that come through here a year. It takes all kinds, but luckily we had an aid report that was filled out by our team members, and let me tell you, it was extremely helpful to identify when and where. When our insurance company asks and they send somebody out to examine the area and see if there was any negligence on our part or not. So there's just a little side note there.
Yes, I want to reiterate that. You know, so if you're in a situation you're like, shoot, I didn't think it was aid report, worthy. You fill one out. You may get some questions back, but we'd rather have it documented than not documented type of situation. So yeah, fill one out. I have absolutely partially filled out aid reports with the information I have to the best of my knowledge right now as it stands. And some of those come from that type of situation where the guest tripped somewhere down the property on the curb, and all I have is their name, I have the location they tripped, and that's it, and it's like, okay, well, still got to fill out the report and still try to get that information. On the flip side of that, if you know the location, you're dealing with a guest that's injured right here, one of my number one things here is that my next thing, go see, walk through the incident, so you have a good understanding of what happened. Do not take down the whole incident report remotely. That is one of my pet peeves, is when I kick back a question to somebody on an incident report and they're like, oh, I don't know, I never even went. I was talking to In at night, and he just told me everything. And I'm like, no, you have to go see for yourself what happened. And and put it together. Now, were you there for the incident? Maybe, maybe not. But go. Was there something? Somebody tripped and fell. Well, did they just stub their toe walking down the hallway, or has a piece of carpet come up and we now need to fix it? Go see what the cause may be in there. So, does that make sense? Any questions?
The only caveat to that is obviously if there's a situation in which you would be put into danger, like a first aid, check the area first. Check call care, that sort of situation.
Yes.
Where, if you have an electrocution going on, we don't advise you to go check out the situation
Yes.
there and put yourself at risk.
Thank you.
As silly as that sounds, we want to make sure that we protect everybody here as well.
Yeah, so the footnote on that is, absolutely. We care about you first and foremost. We're not asking you, there's an active fight going on and 4 people are just slugging it out. No, you don't put yourself in the middle of it. I don't think we have any, licensed security guards here. I'm not asking anyone to jump in and catch a fist that's thrown. So, or anything along those lines. But as much as possible, something happens up into a guest room, go to the guest room. Something happens in the conference center, go to the conference center. Go and see what those areas. Any questions about that?
The only question I have is, where do we find this blank form?
Great. It is on the L drive under HR forms. And it actually can be electronically filled out. Believe it or not. You can actually, there's fields and you can type it if you don't want to write. Lovely way to do it. So, HR forms. So, next one is ask for help if you don't regularly fill out incident reports. There are some of you here that will fill out one incident report a year. One, okay? I am not foolish enough to think that you will remember all of this training, 10 months from now, okay? Go seek out somebody else in the hotel that maybe fills out more like one a month or more. And, like the front desk or something along those lines, and say, hey, am I missing anything? Do I need some more information? What do I got going on here that I need to know? Get their feedback. Don't be afraid to ask for help in that situation. Because, yes, if you don't handle it every day, I get it. I understand. So very, very important there. Next is, so we've talked about the who, what, where, why, when, how, all of that stuff. Let's talk about how should content be worded as you're going into an incident report. So, very important. All text should be written in third person. Okay? What do I mean by that? So I'm going to give a little English lesson. I apologize right now. Not that I'm the champion of English. But it should be he, she, they. We should never see me, I, you. None of those. Those words should never, ever be in an incident report. Where are they appropriate as related to an incident report? Michelle, where are they appropriate?
Wait, hold on.
Andrew's got it here. Witness statement,
yes.
Right? When there's a witness statement, they're appropriate because that person is testifying to the facts related to the situation. But when you are filling out this incident report, it never says I, it never says me, it never says you, it never says any of those words. It says he, she, they. And the person filling out the incident report will refer to themselves by name. So when I fill out an incident report and I'm named in the incident report, saying, Matt Howland had to go handle such and such, arrived to such and such room as, a couple was, in the middle of a domestic disturbance, it says Matt Howland went to the room at such and such time and knocked on the door. It doesn't say I went to the room, even though my name's going to be at the very bottom signed off on this whole thing. Does that make sense? So, he, she, they, used by name. Always refer to the people, the first time by their name. And sometimes by title. It's appropriate in the report to put title when you're referring to employees in the hotel. So it may be Matt Howland, chief engineer. It may be Tammy Sianovich, controller, right? So that's all very appropriate because we can then, 3 years from now, because sometimes incidents come back around 3 years from now, we sit there and we go, well, why would Tammy be an appropriate person to handle such and such incident? And we go, oh, it says controller. She was one of the leadership members, and yes, she would be involved, or something along those lines. And not to say you can't be involved, but the question comes, why would that person be involved in this incident whatsoever? On there. So, should not say I unless it's part of a witness statement. See, I gave you the cheat answer right up there. So, next, stick to the facts pertinent to the situation. Keep subjective comments out of the report. What do I mean by that?
Your opinion.
Your opinion. What did you say, Tammy?
So the guest was drunk.
The guest was drunk. Not ever will you put that in an incident report. Unless, what would be the one caveat that you would put that in an incident report?
Witness statement.
You guys are listening? That's awesome. You have a professional. You have Monroe County Sheriff Deputy saying there that the guest was intoxicated. Guess what? It now says Monroe County Sheriff Deputy says guest was intoxicated, right? It doesn't say Tammy says guest was intoxicated. It says Monroe County Sheriff says guest was intoxicated. Person of authority is saying that they're intoxicated. You don't say it. Ever. Ever. You can say stuff like, you can reference that alcohol may have been involved, but you're not administering a breathalyzer test. You're not doing a blood alcohol content test or anything like that. So you can say the person appeared to be drinking. That alcohol was involved. Things along those lines. Is that clear?
Facts. Guests were slurring their words.
Yes, exactly.
Had a balance. Seemed to have
The person, had trouble, seemed to be staggering and couldn't walk a straight line. What does that say to the rest of us? Well, they're probably drunk. But We don't know that. We don't know that. It could be medication. It could be a other medical problem that's causing that to happen. We don't know any of that. So, the only time it says that they were drunk or intoxicated is when Monroe County Sheriff says, EMT says, all of those people of authority say. Does that make sense? All right. So, keep subjective comments out of it. What's another subjective comment?
They had a beautiful shirt on.
What's that?
They had a beautiful shirt on.
Yes, they had a beautiful shirt. It was a beautiful...
Sequin.
Yeah, right? Things of that nature. That comes under also unrelated facts, on there. It really doesn't matter. I know that, fashionably you picked up on that. That's awesome. But that's an unrelated fact. I'll give you one. Guests shouldn't have been walking out on the golf course at night. That's a subjective statement. It does not belong in an incident report whatsoever. Why? It's your opinion. But you're stating it as a matter of fact, as a person of authority here in the hotel, right? So if I'm a lawyer and I turn around and say, well, if they shouldn't have been walking on the golf course at night, Woodcliff, where's the signage telling people that they're not supposed to be there? Okay? Does that make sense? Now, that one you go, well, that's not clearly subjective. It is. It is subjective. I've seen incident reports come through that what could have been done to prevent this? Guests shouldn't have been walking on the golf course at night. And I'll encourage you, we'll get to that section, I'll encourage you, I'll just say as a footnote, if you don't have really something factual to put in that line item, don't put anything. It's better to leave it blank than not to answer with something just because you feel like you need to answer. So, any questions about that? Moving on to the next part here. Stick to the facts and pertinent to the situation. If there are no witnesses, don't make absolute statements. We talked about that. Say employee allegedly fell down the stairs. So you have an employee that fell down the stairs, right? But did you witness it? Did you see it? Do you know it? Right? Employee allegedly fell down the stairs. If you have a witness, you collect a witness statement from the other employee that watched them trip down the stairs. And so I'm filling out the report, and Andrea says, I saw them fall down the stairs. Okay. Andrea says it. I didn't say it. Andrea says it, right? So, type of situation. Attach any witness, if there are witnesses, state, according to Jim Smith, employee fell down the stairs. Attach any witness statements to the report. When absolute statements are made, you are making yourself the authority in this situation. You understand that? And I'll give you an example of one that I dealt with here a couple of years ago. We had a front desk supervisor that wrote on an incident report that a child cut their foot to the bone in our pool. Okay? Now, the backstory of the situation is the child cut his foot. The parents immediately rushed them out the door to go to urgent care. We barely looked at the child. They came back with that foot all bandaged up, and then we proceeded to fill out the incident report. Okay, so the supervisor that wrote that in the statement, I turned around and said, did you see the cut? Did you see the cut all the way to the bone? Well, no, I didn't. The parents said. Oh, the parents said the cut was all the way to the bone. So but you wrote that the cut was all the way, according to you, who filled out this incident report, the cut was all the way to the bone, right? So do you guys see a problem with that? So be careful with stating those types of situations there, because you're now taking on the authority. So now, if the parents sought medical attention and according to the parents the cut was all the way to the bone, okay, so who's saying it? Am I saying it? No, the parents are saying it. No, it's based on their integrity, not based on mine. Really important. Any questions about that? Because I really want to make sure we understand this very well. What you say matters. Either I've bored you all to sleep and you're just doing great with your eyes wide open, or we're just covering this so awesomely that there are no questions whatsoever.
That's it.
No, thank you. Thank you. I needed that. My ego needed that stroke. Thank you so much.
No, great. Keep rolling now. Let's go.
We're going to keep it going. So, Tony's got things to do. Right here. So, take pictures. Is there a condition that contributed to the incident? Take pictures, try to get pictures all angles, make sure the pictures represent. If there's a vehicle property damage, take pictures. Take pictures. Who here doesn't have a smartphone besides Dave Iacovino? I like to pick on Dave over it. So, who doesn't have a smartphone here and can whip it out and take pictures? Take pictures, right? It's in this day and age, taking pictures, it's so easy. If you gotta text it to me, or something along those lines, but take pictures. So, what not to do with a guest. So, or what to do with a guest. So, first, empathize, don't apologize. Why wouldn't we apologize in a situation? You're taking fault, right? Okay, so it's an art. You got to be able to empathize, show empathy that you feel bad about the situation. But if you apologize in that situation, you may be saying, well, we did something wrong. Well, why should we apologize if we didn't do anything wrong, right? And I know that goes against probably every other guest service training that we do in this hotel, but this is really the fact. In these situations, we need to show empathy with how we're listening, how we're being attentive, how we're caring about the situation. But apologizing is not necessarily the appropriate action on there. Don't act like it's no big deal. So I go back to filling out my form. Don't stand over there and look like your only job in this whole thing is to get an incident report filled out to document the situation. Because in that situation, you're acting like your job is the most important part of this whole situation, and it's no big deal of whatever the guest is going through or the employee is going through. Don't say this happens all the time. I cringe every time I read that. Every time I read it. And I don't read it in incident reports. Where do we read it?
Guest surveys.
Guest surveys, right? You know, I think we had one recently with a fire alarm. Oh, this happens all the time. Right? Don't say that. So train everybody as supervisors and managers here. Train across the board. Sometimes there's a little showmanship that has to happen. We have to act like this never happens here ever. Ever.
Oh my God.
I can't believe this happened at Woodcliff. I can't believe that we had a fire alarm. It never. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We can apologize for fire alarms. But, a little bit of, act like this never happens, that we never have to fill out this form, that we, all of that stuff. Because when we start acting like it happens every day, that's what we communicate to the guests. Oh, this happens all the time. They look like they were like clockwork handling this, on the situation. Anything to add on that, Corey? Agreed? All right, awesome. Don't say, I can't believe this happened again. Don't blame someone else for the situation in an effort to make yourself feel good in front of, or the guest to feel good. Don't blame. And I'm maybe like somewhat sensitive to this because I'm usually the one that catches the blame, but don't blame someone else for that. From a guest perspective, is that really what you want to hear in the moment anyway? No. And later on down the road, you're like recounting the whole situation going, oh, I can't believe they said that Matt Hellman guy never fixed it. And that's the reason why I tripped and fell. Don't do it, right? We don't do that. Don't offer compensation immediately as it may be viewed as an admission of guilt. So it goes up to number 1. Don't apologize. Don't offer compensation immediately. Leave that up to the leadership of the hotel. Leave that up to Corey Dooley. Leave that up to Andrea. Leave that up to another executive member if one of those are filling in. Because it could be really viewed as an admission of guilt. And if we did nothing wrong to cause a situation, we don't necessarily want to be compensating for it. And again, I know this goes against all of our other guest service training, but you'll have to restrain yourself. Don't ever offer to provide a copy of the aid report that you are currently filling out. Ever. Don't ever. Why?
That's a proof.
What's that?
It's like that's the hotel's proof of like what happened.
It is. It is. What is this document? Let me ask this. I'll ask it another way. Who owns it?
It's interior.
The hotel owns it. It's proprietary information. We own it. It's no one else's. It's not. It doesn't belong to anyone else. It's not yours to offer up and give away, by the way. There is only one authority in this hotel to actually offer to give that, and that would be Corey, the GM, to do it. And would be probably extremely rare situations even then, right? So, now, I've been in the situation where the guest is pressuring, and so my response is, you know what, we generally don't. We're going to follow up with the situation. I'm sure that at some point someone from the hotel, the general manager, will be in contact. but we generally don't give away that information. So, so if if you need to say it like that, you can say it like that, but don't say, oh yeah, I think we should be able to give you a copy of that report. That won't be a problem whatsoever. I think that would be fine. Don't do it. Okay? Okay, so I want to go into the details of the report. I'm starting with what not to do. So we've got here Jane Doe, this is a couple years old, 1/19/16, down through date of incident, 1/14. So we got 5 days later, 8 a.m. Where did it occur? Hotel. Who filled out this out? Matt did. Regular job assignment, yes. Okay, so the regular job assignment is yes. The incident happened at 8, but the time their shift began was at 9. And what do? They cut their finger. It was a deep cut on their finger. Who gave first aid? Matt. Okay, so does anybody see any problems with this?
Time between 8 and 9.
Yeah?
You did put your
5
last
days.
name.
No last name.
No last name, right? Yeah.
The shift started at 8 and
What we don't always ask what kind of knife, but that could be pertinent for some situations. So, was safety director notified? Yes, 1/15/16.
Where in the hotel?
Yeah, where did it happen, right? So, where did it happen?
Everything.
So,
No witnesses.
even this part's wrong. I'm going to explain it here in a second. Not handled properly. When you fill out an incident report, you will address every section of that incident report. Every section.
To the best of your ability.
To the best of your ability. Absolutely. So if the answer is NA or not available at this time, the answer is not available at this time. If we have to refill out an incident report later when we get more information, that is what we'll do. But we address everything. So if hotel guest arrival date and time, I put NA in date and time because I'm addressing every single field as I go. Departure, NA, across the board. And I will fill out, or sometimes I'll just, like home phone, if this is not, I'll put a line through it. Why do I do that? Does anybody know why I do that?
So we know that you've addressed it.
So you know I've addressed it. You know that I've thought about the question and I've answered it in one way, shape, or form. I haven't just glossed over it, hurried through the report. I've gone through the whole thing. So as you're doing it, you're doing all of those things. Let me show you the right way as we're moving along here. So we get into Jane Doe. We've got Jane Doe, her full name. We've got date here, and we've got address. We've got Idris' birth. And if you really look at this, I'm sure you guys will pick apart something I missed in doing this. That's okay. Time, and we get down to witness. N.A. Regular job assignment. Chef on here. So, and here's the section. Weather conditions. This is used across all of Widewater's corporate. They have a construction business. They have property managed business. So this doesn't just apply to hotels. It applies all across corporate. So they ask questions about, is it cloudy? Is it rainy? Is it clear? If it happens inside the hotel and it's not pertinent, do this, X. Just cross it off. It's not pertinent to the situation. It's not a pertinent fact to it. So we get down here, cut right index finger. Cut finger near first knuckle, and as I answered again, I've changed the way I do this. Really what they're asking you to do is describe the injury in detail in these 3 lines. And if these 3 lines aren't enough, attach something else to it. Just describe the injury. So cut right index finger right before the knuckle as they were going down through it. Was first aid administered? Yes, by John Smith. And so medical attention? Yes, no. A lot of times, if HR isn't involved, you're not going to know the answer to the medical, was billing handled and all that stuff. That's okay. NA, not available, at this time. At this point, this NA is not applicable. And then when was safety director notified? And we get down through, Jane was slicing tomatoes. While slicing tomatoes, was distracted by Joe, cut her finger. While talking with him, pay attention while slicing tomatoes and retrain on knife handling. So, as an action. Now, we put this out, but I stated earlier, sometimes that last one, what could have been done to prevent this? We can leave it blanks from time to time because, again, many times I see things that are very subjective on there. So you could even argue, pay attention while slicing tomatoes. So is that a subjective? Is what really constitutes paying attention? Okay. So, any questions as we go down through here? No? Awesome. So, really, really important. So you'll see here as I go next section. So this is the incident report section. So this is like the domestic disturbance section goes here on this part of it. Well, it's not a domestic disturbance, so we crossed it right off. We've addressed the section, it was not pertinent, report including theft or loss. Damage report including theft or loss. The building gets run into, we have property that's stolen. Again, it's not that type of report, I exit off. And all of the sections all the way down through get addressed on here. And then, you know, one of the important things that I see all the time is I don't see the injured's name and then who's the person filling out the report on here. So both of those are very important. And the other thing to note here is up here, supervisor's name. And actually, since I filled this out, it actually says manager, I think, completing report in the current version. Yes, manager on duty or HR manager completing report. If you're filling it out, that's you. Your name goes in there. So I was filling this one out, my name went in there. Questions? Okay. Guest injury, we talked about that. Kind of looks the same. I'm not gonna. We're running short on time. I'm not gonna dive. So once the AID report is filled out, what do we do with it? The AID report should be scanned and emailed to the following people: the general manager, which is Corey Dooley at this point; the HR director, which is Haley Pearson; the chief engineer, which is me. Okay. Let me make clear. It should be scanned and emailed. You know why I'm saying that?
So you can lay in bed and read.
Yes, because this is what I do at night on my time off.
I say I'm
Are we
sorry.
live again? Okay, so, yeah, now, here, yes, that is actually one of the answers to it. And, or all of a sudden Sunday, I get a question on, you know, did you know about such and such incident? I can pull open the incident report right there on my phone and be like, oh, that's what happened, as we're going down through. So I can open it anywhere, right? I have full access to it. I don't have to wait to get in here to see the incident report. I don't have to go, Casey, can you go track that thing down and like scan it into me now? You know, that type of situation. Do not make copies and distribute. And the byproduct is we save paper, right? That's all good. Email related pictures and other documents separately to the people listed above. So if you have the ability to put those together, great. If you don't, a separate email is completely appropriate in that situation. Yes?
I have a question about filling out the report. So this is just an easy example. Say you have one employee in the kitchen who cuts themselves. And say that this happens 3 weeks in a row, right? And on the first report you say that you should retrain on knife handling skills. For all 3, would you still put retrain on knife handling skills if it's happened 3 weeks in a row, and let's say after the first time you did?
Well,
do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would say you don't have to answer the question per se. I'll go back to that. You know, as I've learned more, I don't know that is always necessary to answer. So, the answer number 1. Number 2 is I would say, you know, trust HR, trust the general manager, trust their manager. I can tell you this. I see those reports, and as a safety director, because this is the reason I do see those, because if I see that week after week, I will be after the manager saying, hey, this person needs serious, you know, knife training done. You know, who's on this? And I may need to be present if this is now the 3rd time in a row, just to have a witness that we were properly knife trained, you know? So we will follow up, absolutely, on there. So in that situation, Emily, you're probably just the person filling out the report, and I don't think you need to be concerned. That's why it goes through these channels, because, you know, HR will, if I don't see it, HR will be the one saying, hey, didn't I see one last week? Oh yeah, I did. Same person, same issue. This is a big problem. And they'll be demanding that knife training happens on there. This isn't in there, so I want to highlight this next thing. There are situations where when you have a problem, you will be calling somebody to follow up on it. I'll name 2 of them. Number 1, employee injury that requires medical attention. Who do you call?
Workers' comp.
What's that?
Workers' comp gets called.
No, but who do we call? What's that?
Well, HR.
We call the HR director.
And then we call workers' comp.
That is correct. HR handles the workers' comp. Michelle, you're just
Sorry.
You will call the HR director. If we have an employee that is being taken out of here and seeking medical attention, you will call the HR director, right? Because there are timelines for which she needs to respond, you know, and get appropriate action in place. A lot of these times we have 24 hours to get it before our workers' comp appropriately. Not only that, she's going to turn around and she may ask you questions that you never thought of, okay? That's okay. Don't think that you're going to cover every single situation. That's why she does it all the time. So you need to get on the phone just so that we've got all our bases covered, and she's going to ask, well, did you handle this, did this, did this? You know, and you're like, I never even thought of that. And you're like, that's okay. That's why we need to call. In lieu of Haley not being available, Corey, are you the appropriate person to call in that situation?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
It's gonna go through either Michelle or it's gonna go back through corporate. That's putting in the workers' comp.
But it is. But someone needs to be called on an employee injury related to HR on that
Correct.
situation. Okay? So, the next situation, when there is property damage, who do you call? Me. That is correct. You call me. Please. Please call me. I do want to be involved in this situation. Again, I'm going to ask you questions that you never thought of on there. And I don't pretend that you should think of necessarily. So it's important that you call me to ask all those appropriate questions. So what is property damage? Does that mean that somebody scratches this table right here, I want to call on Saturday evening at 11 o'clock at night? No, not necessarily. What I'm qualifying, thank you, Corbin, no. He's shaking his head. No. Take a picture, send me an email. What we're referring to is structural damage to the facility. If you think that we've done sort of structural damage to the facility, if you think it's close to structural damage to the facility, you are picking up the phone, and if it's 2 a.m. in the morning, you are calling me. Am I clear? Any other questions?
Thank you for participating in this training. This is very important to the operation of this hotel as well as protecting our owners' interests. You've been very patient going through this, and it is very important that we follow through with these steps and also train other staff members to do so. Thank you.